My girlfriend told me she was pregnant. So I had arranged to move all her stuff out behind her back. If you only read the title, it might make me seem like the bad guy. But honestly, I'm not. I've known since my early teens that I wanted to be child-free. It was something I felt very strongly about from a young age. My parents didn't exactly oppose the idea, though they did mention I could change my mind in the future. However, since I'm not an only child, they weren't overly concerned because they'd still have grandchildren from my siblings. When I turned 20, I made a personal decision and underwent a vasectomy to ensure I wouldn't have children. Something I felt was right for me. By 22, I met my girlfriend, Katie, and things progressed well. From the beginning of our relationship, I made it clear that I wanted to be child-free. In fact, I remember telling her about my vasectomy. But I also recall that we were having drinks at the time, so I couldn't be sure if she fully understood or remembered it. Fast forward a year and a half. We decided to move in together. At this point, I was 25. And everything seemed to be going smoothly in our relationship. Then, about 2 weeks ago, I came home from work to find Katie standing in our living room with a big smile on her face. She held up a pregnancy test that read positive. Initially, I thought it was one of those viral TikTok pranks. So I played along, waiting for her to laugh and tell me it wasn't real. But as the moments passed, it became clear this wasn't a joke. I kept my composure, though inside, I knew something was wrong. That night, I couldn't sleep. I got up around midnight and started reaching out to a few close friends, explaining the situation and asking for their help. I took a week off from work and began planning how to handle what I knew was coming. I suspected infidelity and, with the help of my best friend Carl, we started discreetly following Katie. On the third day of observation, our suspicions were confirmed. We saw her meeting up with another man, and they went to a motel together. It was devastating, but I needed to see it through. Carl continued to follow the man afterward, discovering that he was married with children of his own. Together, we crafted a plan. I convinced Katie to visit her parents that weekend, using the pregnancy as an excuse to share the good news with them. Meanwhile, I gave Carl and my other friends the keys to our house. While I was at her parents' house with her family, my friends were back at home, packing up all of Katie's belongings. At her parents' house, we had lunch with her family, and Katie happily announced that she was pregnant. Everyone was overjoyed. Except me. Of course. But I kept my calm. Shortly after, I excused myself to take an important phone call. It was Carl, letting me know everything was ready. I returned to the group and asked if I could say a few words. I pulled Katie aside, but within earshot of everyone, I began reminiscing about how we met, how much I cared for her, and then said, "That's why it hurt me so deeply to know that you've cheated on me and are now pregnant with someone else's child." There was a stunned silence. Katie looked at me in shock, insisting it wasn't a funny joke. But I was dead serious. I calmly explained that I've had a vasectomy for 5 years and get regular checkups. So I knew for a fact that I couldn't be the father of her baby. I told her I'd known since the day she showed me the pregnancy test that something was wrong. Right then, her phone rang. I suggested she answer it, saying it was probably AP's name, the real father of her baby. The look on her face was one of sheer panic. As I predicted, it was him. And he was furious. He yelled at her over the phone, telling her that she had ruined his life and that he never wanted to see her again. I continued, saying that I had already arranged for all her belongings to be taken to AP's name's house, where she could stay, assuming he'd be willing to take responsibility for her and the baby. Unfortunately for her, Carl and my other friends had already delivered her things to AP's name's house earlier that day. But he refused to accept them. His wife was also there when they arrived, and understandably, It didn't go over well. After hearing the heated conversation over the phone, I looked at Katie and said, "Well, it seems like you'll have to stay with your parents." And with that, I left, walking away from a tearful Katie and her visibly upset family. Later that evening, I returned home, where my sister was waiting for me. She already knew everything. I broke down in her arms. Though it wasn't part of the original plan. Carl had thought ahead and asked my sister to be there for me. She stayed with me through the weekend, helping me process everything. I allowed myself to grieve, to feel the full weight of the betrayal. It was a rough experience. But I knew I had made the right decision.